Hey, son, I don't know if weekend in Bahrain means anything. I'm prepared to envision the entire 2025 F1 season based on a couple times around the track, a few hundred laps. What do you think? That's going to be the theme of this week's episode.
Yeah, I think we have plenty of evidence to go on here. I don't even know why we need to run a whole season. We already know what's going to happen. So,
all right, you ready to go, son?
I'm ready to go.
Hello, welcome to Hard Compound, American take on Formula One, featuring the smartest discussion on F1 in all the land. So, finally, F1 2025 season is upon us. Testing this week, Melbourne in 2 weeks. I think we have enough flimsy evidence to make our predictions. So, son, what are your big takeaways from this past few days of testing in Bahrain?
Well, I think there is always some intrigue in testing. It's the first chance anybody really gets to see these cars out on track, to see the drivers on track. And given all the change-ups that happened in the off-season and, announced during last year, this was a pretty interesting event and something I think a lot of people were excited for. So some of the big items, obviously everyone wanted to see Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari, how the Ferrari was going to stack up. McLaren finally got back on top last season. Are they the best team? Are they the favorites? I don't know if we got answers, but at least we got to see the kinds of things we should expect from those teams. So those were some of my big items that, I think a lot of people were looking at. We saw Hamilton and he looked relatively comfortable, at ease, pretty quick. That team looks tough, which I think is exciting. McLaren looking good. For me, after this week, seems clear that those two teams are probably the two favorites going into this season.
Yeah, based on testing, it seems like it's Ferrari McLaren. Now, by the end of last year, I had predicted differently because Ferrari seemed like they'd gotten everything right and they were just getting better and better and better. Now they're adding Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes in fits and starts seem to be getting everything better. Of course, they don't have Lewis Hamilton anymore. They've got Kimi Antonelli. Red Bull seemed to have fallen into a fourth best spot, and it was only because Max was just somehow able to just ruthlessly force that car onto the podium week after week. But they otherwise did not belong there. McLaren, though, I always just thought was odd. Here they are. They get their power unit from Mercedes. They seem to never quite fully understand why their car was so much better. And so I had expected this to sort of fall off, but I think I was wrong. McLaren looks like the team to beat, with maybe only Ferrari putting up a challenge as far as the pace of the car. But I guess that begs the question because it always just seemed like Lando rarely got the elbows out. But it looks like he now has the best car and knows it. Ferrari maybe. You got Charles Leclerc, you got Lewis Hamilton, but it looks like Lando's like, hey, I've been at McLaren for years now. We now have the best car. I'm not going to let anybody take this away from me.
Well, I hope so. I hope he is determined enough and has learned enough from this last season to be ruthless and to take what he can get, and more than just what he can get. That is what made and makes Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso so good. They just go out there and take it. And Lando didn't do that last year. Now, admittedly, Red Bull was quite dominant. Max was quite dominant for the first third of that season. So it made it a little bit tough. Lando was playing catch up through most of the season. But they still had the best car for most of the season. And he couldn't quite get it done. And I think here and there, if he just was a little bit more ruthless, he might have been able to get his championship last year. That said, I mean, you mentioned Red Bull. I think that's another big takeaway from this testing session. It still looked tough, kind of unruly, probably the fourth best car. At least it seemed that way through testing. And we saw Max basically wrestle that thing so well that he put up, one of the fastest times all week. So I think once again, Max is going to have something to say about this championship, even without, the best car or the second or maybe even the third best car. He's going to have something to say.
Yeah, I think this is going to be interesting because I was mocked for this, but I'm like, Red Bull, this is the fourth best car last year. People are like, no, look, Max is going to win. He's going to win his fourth in a row. You're talking nonsense. But I think by the end of the year, most people are like, yeah, I think that is the fourth best car. I think this year, most people are like, that's the fourth best car, fourth fastest. And I don't know. If they start out with the fourth fastest car, it's going to be tough. I mean, Max is going to trying to go for his record-tying fifth consecutive championship. That's going to be very tough. I mean, we'll see. But, back to Lando, looks like he might have the best car. Will he get the elbows out? I don't know. I do know that the first time McLaren says, oh, no, both drivers get equal treatment, he needs to step in and very publicly say, that's not the case. Lewis Hamilton did not get no equal treatment at Mercedes because he's Lewis Hamilton. Nobody's treating Liam Lawson equally with Max Verstappen. And how dare they even say such a thing? And if Lando just goes along with that, then I'm like, yep, he's given up his season. So we'll see.
Right. I mean, if you want to win, you have to know that you're going to win, right? I mean, Lewis always knew he was going to win. Max always knows he's going to win. If he doesn't, then it's fuel, right?
Right.
And Lando doesn't seem to take losing personally. He needs to take it personally, right?
Right.
So I think that's what sets some of these championship drivers apart is really that mentality.
Yeah. Now, the opposite of championship drivers, the rookie drivers, because this is a unique year. I mean, it's the final year of a set of regulations, and yet it's the first year in a long time where we have just had multiple rookies. And I think it's interesting because, watching the testing and we would say, oh, is Liam Lawson going to be good enough? Molly Beerman, Barletto. But I think the interesting thing here with these rookies is they all have very different expectations. I mean, Liam Lawson, you think we'll call him a rookie. And it's like, well, he's in a good car, good team. He's just going to be second to Max. But it's like, look, Red Bull has shown, hey, we're willing to pull guys out mid-season. You don't get the job done. Meanwhile, if you're in Haas, they're like, hey, we believe we can be a true mid-pack team. But then there are other guys where it's like, who's it? Kick Sauber?
That's Bartoletto.
Yeah, Bartoletto. I mean, it's like, yeah, we're just going around the track. No big deal. Audi will take us over soon, and we know we're not going to do anything. So, so there's like no pressure. So it's interesting to me, the sort of the different types of pressures on the rookie drivers.
Yeah, I think the rookies are very interesting this year. There's so many of them. I think half the teams on the grid have a rookie. Seems like, anyways. At Alpine, we've got Doohan, and he has been with that organization for a long time. He's proven that he's a good driver through the ranks, and now he gets a seat, and there's somebody sitting right behind him.
Right.
So he's got to come in right away and prove he deserves that seat. Then there's a guy he deserves that seat in, frankly, a car that hopefully is the fifth best car on track, but could easily also be one of the worst, as they proved last year. So that's tough. It's tough to come into a team like that and off the bat prove you have what it takes. But then you have a guy I think what's the right word? Best situation for the rookie drivers of anybody has to be Antonelli.
Oh, yeah.
Coming into Mercedes,
right?
There's no pressure on him at all. Mercedes want to ease him into it. Take your time. We're going to support you in every way, and you're going to have a good car.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He's coming in easiest drive for a rookie this season, I think. So it'll be interesting to see what he does and what he's capable of. I think a lot of these rookies are not going to get a fair shot. He is one that I think will get more than a fair chance to become a full-time, F1 driver for a long, long time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm talking about there's different expectations, but you're right. I mean, who's got the sort of the easiest path? I guess it's got to be, you're right, Kimi Antonelli. So we'll see. Why don't you give me, just based on testing, but we know these drivers pretty well, your top 5, you think how they'll finish for the year?
Ooh, top 5 drivers. Okay, well, I think my top 5 might be a little bit controversial, a little bit interesting, but I'm going to go with guys that have proven themselves on teams that have proven themselves. So, off the top, in a surprise pick, maybe not, winning his 5th straight drivers' championship, Max Verstappen.
Ooh.
He's just too good right now. And I think he will not give up, that championship so easily. And I think he proved in testing like he's capable of handling that car. It looks tough, but he's so good. He's still on top of his game. He can do it. And he's clearly shown he's got what it takes to win. So I'm taking him. Next, Lando. 2nd place once again. Very good car, good driver. I think he has some battles. I think he gets a little bit scrappier this season than he was last. But I think he just, in the face of that utter ruthless, cutthroat mentality of Max, of some of these other guys, I don't know that he's really got it. I don't think he's got it. I hope he proves me otherwise, because I think it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
But what I've seen of Lando in his time in F1, I don't think he's got it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to say Ferrari looks positive. And with the rejuvenated spirit, Lewis Hamilton is going to come in 3rd, only a short few points behind both 2nd and 1st place, Lando and Max.
Wow.
I think it's going to be tight this season. It looks like it'll be a very fun, close, competitive season. I hope that it is. And I think Lewis, given a good car, he wants to get back to the top. I think that's really the only reason he's still racing in F1. He doesn't need to. He left Mercedes. Is his legacy there? He doesn't seem to care too much about it. All he wants now is to win. I like the move to Ferrari. I think he goes for it.
Nice.
I think he comes up a bit short, but I think he goes for it. Then, 4th, I'm going to have to go with Lewis's teammate here, Leclerc.
Yeah.
He's awesome. He's great. Really good driver. He's proven it. He's been at Ferrari for a long time. Ferrari looks like they're going to be very competitive. And I think, he's just going to push the car to its limits. And I think occasionally he gets himself into some trouble by pushing a little bit too much, maybe getting a little bit too emotional, and will just go overboard a little bit and lose some really key points in the championship. But I think, he keeps it close. And then lastly, I'm going to take George Russell. I think that McLaren is still probably looking like the 3rd best car on the grid. Russell's been there for a while.
Yeah, Mercedes,
I think he's getting a little bit cleaner in his drives. And I think, he'll rack up some good points and ultimately finish 5th.
Well, interesting. So you've got Max, Lando, Lewis, Charles, and George. My top 5, based again on a few hundred laps in Bahrain, but what I know of the current drivers, different order, but all the same. I've got Max with his record-tying 5th in a row. Then I have Charles. I just think that Ferrari will be a little bit better than McLaren this year. Then I have Lando. Then I have George. Then I have Lewis. I think Lewis, he's one of the all-time greats. He's going to be in what might be the best car, but, he's about 40. So same 5 drivers.
That's funny, actually. I kind of didn't expect that. But
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I know we don't have Oscar there. Liam, Kimi. But yeah, interesting. Now, what about your top 5 team finishes?
Yeah, I think given my top 5, I'm taking Ferrari as my top team, back on top. I think both those drivers are just a good pair. And Vasseur, since he's come in, has improved the team every year. I think this car is going to do really well. And ultimately, I think those drivers and that team is going to be more competitive than McLaren. McLaren may have a better car, might be a little bit faster, but as a team, I'm not sure that they are, the most or the best suited to actually win the constructors again. That said, I do think they'll be up there. They'll be pretty close. I think McLaren comes second. After that, I'm taking Red Bull.
Oh,
I think Liam does well enough, racks up enough points, and Max is just Max. So, they just outscore Mercedes in fourth. So I think it's not that crazy to assume that those are the four best teams. And so I have them all up there. I think the interesting one is 5. And, I'm kind of torn a little bit. I think there are 2 teams that will battle it out for 5th. And I think that's going to be Alpine and Williams, actually. I think Williams looked pretty decent in testing. They didn't seem to have too many issues and, looked pretty quick overall. Sainz coming in and Albon, that's a good driver pairing. But I think I'm going to go with Alpine. I think given the way they finished this season last year, they may have sorted through some of their absurdly horrible issues that they had through most of the season last year. And I like Gasly. I think he's going to kind of claw that team up into 5th place. I think it's going to be distant like it was last year for Aston, but I think they'll, top that mid-pack.
Yeah, Carlos, like I said, he looked good at Williams, Carlos Sainz, and Alpine last year, they didn't right the ship, but, they salvaged the season there at the end. So you have Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, Alpine, Williams. Mine is somewhat similar. I've got McLaren, then Ferrari, then Mercedes. I just think, no slander on Liam Lawson, but I just think that Red Bull car is and has been much worse than we have all thought. It's just Max is just that good.
Mm-hmm.
So McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, then my wild card, because there's Alpine, but maybe Williams, like you said. My wild card is Haas.
Interesting.
So I think it'll be Haas, Williams, Alpine, V-Carb. Haas just seems to be getting better. The other teams just, I still think they're not as focused. So, I'm kind of, I know.
I think because honestly, that's interesting to me because I kind of think Haas is one of those 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think they took 2 steps forward last season. I think they're taking 1 step back this season.
Funny.
Ocon and Behrman, I think, is one of the worst driver pairings on the grid. I don't necessarily want to slander either one of them.
Right.
But, we've got some guys that have really proven how consistent and good they are. And, Behrman's coming in. He was solid when he raced a few times last year with a couple different teams. I don't know how he's going to pair well with Ocon. And that car, frankly, looked tough in testing. I think Aston does better than them. Although, Alonso will probably just sort of haul that team into a decent position.
Well, this is part of the reason why I'm making this as my wild card is because I think Haas, they seem to be getting better. They seem to just be really, let's go all out, guns a-blazing. Williams is, I think, just a big ship, and I think they finally got it turned around and it's pointed in the right direction, but it's just going to take some more time, even with a much better team. So that's why I've got them just behind my surprise number 5 of Haas. Alpine, they did seem to salvage the season at the end of last year. Gasly's great. We've talked about him multiple times. But this is a team that I think that they'll probably even sell the team. I just don't think they're focused. It's like V-Carb. They're not focused. Yuki's like, F this. I should be in Red Bull. Aston, my God, Alonso got that in the 5th last year. That was a garbage car, and it's going to be worse this year. And he's just getting older, and Stroll doesn't belong. Sauber, they're selling the team. They're in the process of selling the team. So
okay. Honestly, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope Haas gets in there 5th place. I think that would be fun to watch.
Yeah. And like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if it's Williams too, but I mean, you think about it, because I think after Ferrari, I think no one has more wins than Williams, constructors championships, I should say.
Isn't it? Doesn't McLaren?
Yes, I think it's tied, something like that. But, I think there's a bunch. It's, after Ferrari, but Williams is there, but Williams has just been so piss poor for so long. You start to wonder, like, Cadillac from Detroit joining the grid next year, I believe. And look, the Detroit Lions, they've never won a Super Bowl. It's been, 60, 70 years of Super Bowls. They've never won. And you start to think, like, well, any of these teams ever again, is the sport just, I think with the spending cap, it's going to equalize things. But so who knows? But be great. I think even just fifth place for Haas would be a huge victory. All right. Dirty Air segment. The rumors just for a bit floated around that somebody was going to offer Max like $1 billion to be drive. And people thought this was outrageous and just stupid, clickbait. And it mostly is. But I just thought, it's within the realm of possibility. Maybe not for a true constructor like a Mercedes, where they're building cars and selling cars, or even Ferrari, where they're building, super fast, expensive cars and selling them. They're just branding. But a team that's like Red Bull, for example, that just all branding. I mean, you win. You have a top driver. Max just has no personality. That could increase your value. Like, I was just looking at some of these different stats. Lionel Messi. I don't know dick about soccer, but he is apparently one of the top soccer players in the world. He signed with Miami. Okay, so Miami has a soccer team. That's good, awesome. I thought they were all in England, but Miami has a soccer team. When he started, that team was worth $600 million. Okay, in 2023. 2025, it's worth about $1.4 billion. So it's not all on him. But in 2 years, their valuation has increased by hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, that was kind of my segue to talk about salaries and team valuations, because there's just so much money in there now. Ferrari's now $5 billion. Every team is worth over $1 billion. Don't really know where I was going with that, but it's just sort of like, years ago we predicted there was going to be 11 teams probably by 2026, 12 teams by 2030. I think everybody else thought that was insane. It was never going to happen. The entry fee to join is $200 million. We all know Cadillac paid way more than that. But teams, big time global sports, the branding, the valuations that it does with your brand. The president of the FIA is looking to China. Hey man, you need a team. China could, fund, just sort of like the Middle Eastern countries fund a lot of this stuff just from, essentially from the national coffers. China could do that. To me, it went from an 11 and 12th team as being an outrageous prediction to being an absolute certainty, as close to certainty as possible.
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I guess two things. One, if we're talking about money and team valuation, I'm pretty sure like every single NFL team is worth more than $1 billion. There's 32 teams in the NFL?
Yeah.
You can support that and continue to grow that, right? There's only 10 teams in F1, soon to be 11. You have a third of what the NFL supports.
Right, which is essentially
everybody
just US.
is valued over $1 billion.
Yeah.
Easily the market cap is far, far more than it currently is in F1 for this sport. And then I think it's very obvious where there is an abundance of, frankly, new money. Middle East, and for the last 10, 15 years, F1 has been exploiting that, and I think we'll continue to exploit that. And then, like we said earlier last season, China's the next big market. Obviously, the US, North America, we've seen a large sort of increase in F1 presence. And I think that will continue to grow here. But I think the next big location that they're looking to enter, next big market has to be China. They are on, frankly, the cutting edge of vehicle technology at this point for consumers, especially in terms of battery technology. And they have, a shitload of money. So there will be at least 12 teams within the next 5 years. And probably one of those will be Chinese.
Yeah. I think the only thing slowing down the inevitability of a 12th team is that right now there are a few teams that are likely going to be sold. So Kicksauber's sold. VCarb, Red Bull is just not getting anything out of that anymore. They'll likely be sold. Toyota is sort of ingratiating itself with Haas. They may buy that. Alpine is still, but I mean, for teams, I mean, it's funny that because Red Bull, man, remember when Red Bull relied on Honda? I'm so glad Honda stayed in F1, but man, those Honda engines from like 2015 stuff, those was horrible. But I mean, the Red Bull model, which they've now abandoned because they're becoming a true constructor. They're building their own wind tunnel and getting their own power unit. They're partnering with Ford, but it's Red Bull. They're like going to be like a Mercedes, But that model, I think, just works. The previous Red Bull model, which is a company that understands the brand value of F1 and being part of F1 and being a fun team in F1 and winning races in F1, a beverage company that no one knows. And now you're everywhere. So I just think there's just too many opportunities. So I just think it's inevitable. But we've been talking about team valuations. So Lewis got a ton of money signing with Ferrari. Max will make a ton of money, whoever he signs with, not just as a racer, but also branding. Again, Max is so stiff. He's not a great spokesman. He's like Tom Brady in the NFL, all-time great, but, he's not fun. He can't turn it off, like, say, Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning is fun. I don't know. Who do we think is going to be the next mega money-making F1 star?
That is a good question. I don't know if we've seen them in F1 yet.
I don't know. I think it's got to be someone who's in F1 and who's proven himself, but then can move to a new team that sort of desperately needs him. So, I mean, like, let's say, for example, Liam Lawson just can't hang. Well, they get rid of him and say they may briefly bring up Yuki. Well, Yuki, I mean, look, I'm sorry. I know Yuki feels he deserves to be in that spot, but Yuki's a mid-pack driver. Maybe Oscar. Say, hey, I got me a good agent. You desperately need me. You know what I can do. Or maybe it's Charles. I mean, I know Charles loves Ferrari. I don't know. But it seems to me there's not necessarily Lewis Hamilton money, because Lewis Hamilton's been around for so long. He's won so much. But I think there's an opportunity for some driver already on the grid to make like soccer star money.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it could be possible. I think Oscar could be an interesting choice. I just feel like so many guys are kind of boring, I almost think it could be Liam Lawson. Like, if he does well at Red Bull, and then Aston needs somebody after Alonso leaves, and then, they bring in this kid. I don't know. I don't know who it might be, where they might go. Maybe it'll be to Audi when Audi becomes a team. And they've got Hülkenberg and this rookie Bortoletto. He didn't pan out, but we can go pay this kid a ton of cash.
In interviews, Liam Lawson's pretty fun. Yuki's fun. I mean, that's kind of it. Hülkenberg can be, but you're kind of it. I mean, I always think Lewis Hamilton is stiff, but a lot of people like him. George Russell, he tries, he's close. He just doesn't quite have it, the star quality. I think maybe Charles, Charles and Carlos, but Carlos already had a shot, and people are like, go to Williams.
Yeah, could be Charles, but I mean, I just don't see anywhere other than Ferrari paying Charles like a ton of money. And we all know George Russell is the villain of this story. So I'm not sure that anybody is paying George that kind of money. He might just take it, steal it from somebody, but nobody's giving it to him.
Switching to the soft compound. The new trailer for Drive to Survive just dropped. It's only like a minute long. My one impression was, dang, Claire Williams is looking fine. It's a damn shame she shelled the team too soon, but she was looking fine. We can't really review it yet because nothing has happened. But as far as F1 on television here in the U.S., It's surprisingly up in the air. ESPN's been showing the races for years, but they've said we're not going to do it. ESPN is having a lot of long-term structural issues, and I think they've just said, look, we're just going to fix on basketball and news programs about basketball, and that's our future. I don't know. I'm one of those people, I was hoping that like F1 would say, hey, we want to be with a broadcaster, so our races in America, everyone can see every race, which is what Indy did. And Fox Sports is now doing Indy, and I think they do a great job. But then Fox said, no, we're probably not going to be in on the bidding war. So I think now it's sort of like, look, it sort of is going to be on a streaming service. So I don't know.
Yeah, it seems more and more likely that it has to be on a streaming service. I think Netflix and maybe Apple are the two obvious choices here. You know, Netflix has been trying to get more and more into live streaming and live streaming sort of sports content. And then Apple obviously has had their hand on a few more sort of sporting streams. So they do MLS now, I guess, and are, you know, working on that massive budget movie.
Yeah. Which I saw another trailer for. It looked good. Oh, speaking of F1 movies, I watch a lot of movies, and I saw a clip, like the intro of a movie, and it was a good-looking French girl, and it was a lovely outdoor scene, France, and they're getting married. I'm like, oh, because I like romance, French girls, so let me watch this. And let me tell you, man, talk about a movie giving you the ick. The title for this was Honeymoon with My Mother. So, which already tells you how icky it is. But I didn't know any of this. I'm like, oh, I'll watch this. Anyways, it starts off at the wedding, but she ditches the guy. And she ditches this guy for a total dick. And the thing about the guy who's a total dick is he conveys he's an absolute total dick within 0.2 of a second. So I'm like, maybe I should turn this. But the guy comes in 0.2 of a second, like, who is this dick? I'm like, I swear, my hand to God, I swear that's Esteban Ocon. Now, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Well, that's funny. Okay. But I keep watching it, and the movie is horrible. It gets worse with every passing moment because literally the dude and his mother go on the honeymoon together. It's horrible. But there's 0.2 of a second later on in the movie, that chick is with Esteban Ocon. I'm like, why is he in this movie? I'm not making up. It's not a guy who looks like him. It's literally Esteban Ocon. I'm like, this is his brother, the director? Like, why is he in this movie? And some big surprise, he's a total dick.
That is ridiculous. And I don't know, maybe we need an MST3K on this.
Oh, that's movie. A good one. But I mean, like, literally, if I ever see Esteban Ocon, that's the first thing I'm going to say. I won't even say F1. I'm like, hey, man, how come you were in that awful French movie? You know, like, are you doing movies for the sideline? Although I think actually, now that I think about it, a podcast about like racing movies might be good. Oh, so speaking of movies, so, you know, as a little kid, there's only like 2-3 channels. I'd run home, watch Speed Racer. And then like twice a year, though, the afternoon movie would be for kids. Godzilla camera, you know, stuff like that. I turn on the TV. I'm always watching movies. And it starts off with the sound, that atonal sound, and then Toho presentation. I'm like, what is this? Like, is this Monster Island? What is this? And it turned out to be this 1970 movie from Japan. It's called Hairpin Circus. And it's horrible, but it's so good. It's basically, if you can imagine Fast and Furious, only it's in Japan, but in 1970, and with like a $200 budget. Okay. And then for some reason, there's this, it's literally like 1970 Japan. The score is like 50s American jazz, and it doesn't work at all. And you're like, who did this? Like, just some of the stuff that's out there.
Well, that's great. Maybe we'll all have to watch it.
Yeah, Hairpin Circus. Yes. I think what happened is he was in a crash. You know, it was hard to discern the plot, but he was basically in a crash. He was in a bad crash, and so now he's a driving instructor, and not for racers. Like for housewives, he teaches them how to drive. And part of the fun part of the movie is, you know, there's this one woman and she's just crazy. And so it's like, how fast can I go? How fast can I go? she wants to kill herself basically, but all the others are just housewives and they laugh like, oh, I'm so terrible at driving, like, I'm like, what was the pitch meeting for this movie? I don't know. Anyway, I'll tell you, I don't know where it's going with any of this, Patrick. Well, I'm going to have to get Netflix and watch Drive to Survive because obviously I'm going to need some actual racing content. Across the line, that is our segment where we predict the top 5 finishers of the next race. There's finally going to be a next race a fortnight from now in Melbourne. I'm so glad that they start the season in Melbourne. Now, we each take turns choosing our top 5. Once a driver is chosen, he's off the board. If our driver does finish in the top 5, we get 1 point. If he finishes in the exact right spot that we predict, we get 3 points. We tally it up at the end of the year. All the rights and privileges go to the winner, which is basically nothing, but it's still fun. So, Patrick, it's our very first across the line for 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And I explained it properly, I'm pretty sure.
Well enough.
Yeah.
If you can't understand that, then I don't know. Go back to school.
So who should go first? I don't even know. I know I lost last year, but...
Well, yeah. I guess maybe you go first then. You can start out first.
Okay. Yeah. It's like the draft. I came in second, so I go, okay. All right. So it's Melbourne, and Ferrari looked good. McLaren looked good. I'm not sure that track in Bahrain tells us anything about Melbourne, but I'm going to go with Lando.
Ooh, Lando. Right off the bat with a win. That would be a good start for him. Good start for McLaren. I'm taking Max.
That's a safe choice.
If he's on the board, gotta take him.
Oh, yeah.
Until proven otherwise, I think. Let's see. Then P2, I'm going to take Leclerc.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I wanted it to be like, Lewis gets the win, at Ferrari. That'd be a big-ass deal. But I'm like, I just don't believe it's going to happen. So, all right, you took Max, then you took Charles. I'm going to take George and then Lewis. Man, we are not showing Piastri any love.
Yeah, I guess in his home race, that's tough. Yeah. Well, fine. I'll take him. P3, Oscar.
Oh, nice.
And, oh boy, you got Lewis and George. So my P4 pick is going to be Pierre Gasly.
Nice. Yeah, Gasly's a good guy, good driver, and I hope that team does well. I'm going to go. It was fun to see Williams look so good, and Carlos was looking especially good. Albon better watch out, but I'm going to go Carlos Sainz.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I will go with Liam Lawson, almost an Aussie.
Well, then I guess I got to go with another man from the Southern Hemisphere. I'm going to take Doohan, P5.
Oh, I would like to see that. Yeah, what his dad was like, I think, in MotoGP. I'm not sure. I don't watch that sport. So you have Max, Charles, Oscar, Pierre, and Doohan. I've got Lando, George, Hamilton, Sainz, and Liam Lawson. Any crazy predictions, Patrick?
My crazy prediction is that at some point this season, maybe, let's see, what race? Maybe Monaco. It's going to go ridiculous. And Alpine is going to get a 1-2 finish. Gasly and Doohan. And you know what they're going to do to celebrate? Cut off all their hair. Best hair on the grid, both of them.
That is true.
And they're going to have no more hair left.
Oh, that's funny. You're right. That's the best hair duo in F1. Nice. That's a good one. Well, mine is, I guess, a bit more pedestrian, and that is there's so much money in F1. And Gene Haas, who bought in at the exact right time, just does not want to spend any money. And he's getting up in age. And Toyota's racing group is like a part sponsor, part aid for Haas, the Haas F1 team, as of last year. I think they are going to bid and buy up not only the Haas F1 team, but all of Haas Racing. So everything affiliated with their Indy, with their NASCAR, with F1, all of it.
Wow. That'd be big.
Yeah, nice big payday for Gene and his family. All right. I want to thank you all for listening to everybody's most beloved father and son F1 podcast. It is much appreciated, and we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
You just finished listening to Hard Compound, recorded in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and around the world.